Guys, we're going to start out with Julian Assange today. That's how we're going to start the show, which is kind of like my subtle way of giving the disclaimer, like, this first part might not be that funny. You know, I'm a firm believer that you can really make anything funny, but sometimes, you know, when it comes to a blatant assault on press freedom and a modern day execution attempt at somebody who all they did was publish the truth to the American people, and you're watching it happen in real time in a brutal Orwellian style fashion, I just kind of tough to find the punchlines there. Really is. I mean, you know, really is. So, but it's day 2 of Julian Assange's hearing, and I think the best place to start is from some people who are actually there. This is Taylor Hudak. She's part of the organization Action for Assange, an organization that I'm sure you are familiar with. I've done some of their streams before. They do online visuals for Julian Assange. They are in London on the ground right now. And here's some of what she had to say today for day 2 of the hearing. Check it out.
Hi everyone, I'm Taylor Hudak and I am outside Belmarsh Prison in Woolwich Crown Court in London. Today is day 2 of Julian Assange's full extradition hearing. The legal proceedings are continuing today, and we are hearing from inside the courtroom that the defense is continuing to discuss some of the revelations that were brought up yesterday, being the fact that there has been no evidence and no proof to suggest that anybody was injured as a result of WikiLeaks publications. The defense debunked the long-standing myth that WikiLeaks was a publication that released the unredacted names of informants and potentially put people's lives at risk. This is not true. In fact, it was David Lee and Luke Harding of The Guardian who published a password to various cables, and this was addressed in court. Hi, everyone.
Okay, so she went through a couple things there. First thing she went through, the names that WikiLeaks published in 2011. There's no evidence that any of the stuff that they published, any of the information they published in 2011 was actually harmful to people. They're saying it put people's lives in danger. There's no evidence of that. Also, it was The Guardian and a book affiliated with WikiLeaks that published a password first. This is what's going on in the court. So what specifically are they referring to? Well, here, check this out. This is actually The Guardian's response. We're going to go there quickly. So Julian Assange was handcuffed 11 times and stripped naked. WikiLeaks founder's lawyers complained of interference after first day of extradition. Now, they are acknowledging that this happened, as Taylor will acknowledge later as well in a second video we're going to play. So I will say, at least The Guardian is acknowledging that this is going on. Julian Assange was handcuffed 11 times, stripped naked twice, and has had his case files confiscated after the first day of his extradition hearing. So this all happened yesterday. Their appeal to the judge, and this is the appeal from his lawyers, their appeal to the judge overseeing the trial was also supported by legal counsel for the U.S. government, who said it was essential for the WikiLeaks founder to be given a fair trial. All right, so here's what's happening. So they're claiming that the unredacted files had been published because a password to this material had appeared in a Guardian book on the affair. The gates got opened not by Assange or WikiLeaks, but by another member of that partnership. Now, what they're referring to is The Guardian, and they're referring to the publication of a book by David Ley and Luke Harding. The Guardian denied this claim. The Guardian has made it clear that it is opposed. This is The Guardian's take. The Guardian has made it clear it is opposed to the extradition of Julian Assange. However, it is entirely wrong to say The Guardian's 2011 WikiLeaks book led to the publication of unredacted government files, a spokesman said. The book contained a password, which the authors have been told by Julian Assange was temporary and would expire and be deleted in a matter of hours. The book also contained no details about the whereabouts of the files. No concerns were expressed by Assange or WikiLeaks about security being compromised when the book was published in February 2011. WikiLeaks published the unredacted files in September 2011. The Guardian's former investigations editor, David Lee, who wrote the book with Lou Harding, said, "It's a complete invention that I had anything to do with Julian Assange's own publication decision. His cause is not helped by people making things up." So that's their claim. Now, the WikiLeaks claim is that, well, look, this was all put out by The Guardian and nobody was actually put in danger. Those are the two things that they've been getting at so far in the trial. So here's the book they're referring to. I found it interesting that in this article, they keep not saying the title of the book. I don't know if you noticed that, but they keep not saying the title of the book. But here's the book in question. And, this is an Amazon link. It's just the easiest link to grab when you're looking for the title of the book. Here's the book in question. WikiLeaks Inside Julian Assange's War on Secrecy. Now, this was published in February 15th, on February 15th, 2011. And again, WikiLeaks dropped those unredacted files in September of 2011. So this book came out before the WikiLeaks dump, and no one's disputing that. So that is the timeline here. This book came out. What WikiLeaks is saying is like, hey, like all this stuff was published there. There was a password published there. This is not on WikiLeaks, first of all. Second of all, there's no evidence that any of the things we published put anyone in danger. There's no evidence of that. So this is the book that they're referring to. Now, you'll notice these names, David Ley and Luke Harding. Who is Luke Harding? Does that name sound familiar to you? It might, and here's why. Here's who Luke Harding is, just for a quick refresher. Luke Harding is the guy who has been all over Trump Russia as of recent, and he wrote this book. He wrote a book called Collusion. That's Luke Harding's book, and it's all about Trump and Russia, and it's all about the Steele dossier. And then Luke Harding did an interview with Aaron Mate over at The Real News, and Luke Harding was asked the question, was there collusion? And Luke Harding could not answer that question. He just couldn't. Aaron Mate goes, you can see the video. This interview happened a while ago. Aaron Mate just goes straight up, hey, Luke, is there collusion? And Luke goes, well, and then just proceeds to parrot the same talking points we've heard over and over again. Talk about the Steele dossier, talk about whatever else. But he couldn't answer Aaron's actual question. So what was the collusion? What exactly did Trump and Russia do? How did they coordinate this Trump victory? What exactly? He couldn't do it. Dude wrote a book with the title, couldn't freaking do it. He couldn't answer Aaron Mate's question. He just couldn't do it. Eventually he got frustrated, left the interview. And you can see all that. He wrote a book called Collusion. If you write a book called Collusion and you can't answer the question, so where exactly was the collusion? Gee, I don't know. That's a little iffy. So that's a quick refresher on who that guy is. Getting back to the Guardian article, though, I want to focus on this part here. The Australian, they're referring to Julian Assange, of course, who could face a 175-year prison sentence if found guilty, is accused of working with former U.S. Army intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning to leak classified documents. Once again, what do all these charges have in common? Absolutely no evidence. There's no evidence anything he published hurt anyone or put anyone in danger. There's speculation over was it the Guardian first, was it WikiLeaks first? They published this stuff that led to WikiLeaks doing it later. There's that part, there's that component, and also there's the other component of they're saying that Julian Assange worked with Chelsea Manning. Now, when they say worked with, what they mean is that Julian Assange actually helped her. And that's why, by the way, they're holding Chelsea Manning. That's why they're torturing Chelsea Manning and charging her $1,000 a day while she's being held in prison. That's why they're doing it, because they want her to say Julian Assange helped her. Because just saying, if Julian Assange, as a publisher, just publishes documents that a whistleblower, i.e. Chelsea Manning, provides, there's no crime in that. That's not, like, that's totally fine. Glenn Greenwald lays out all those ground rules. He has been for years. And that's how it works. But if he helps her, now all of a sudden he's hacking. There's the crime. And they want to pin that on him. So they're holding Chelsea Manning, trying to force a false confession out of her. Because she's repeatedly said, no, he hasn't. He hasn't helped me. But that's not the answer they want to hear. They're trying to force her into saying he did help me. He actually helped me. So that's what they can pin on him. So when you go through these charges, you kind of just see exactly how insanely bogus all of them are. And how already the lawyers are debunking all this stuff. And just another aside here. I know there are some people, especially in the United States, who are all for Chelsea Manning, which is awesome. I'm all for Chelsea Manning as well. But they're not all for Julian Assange. And these two are linked. Chelsea Manning is going through what she's going through because they're trying to get Assange. They're connected. So you got to be for both. You really do. You got to be for both, full stop. Because Chelsea Manning and Julian Assange are connected. They're doing what they're doing to Chelsea Manning to try to get Julian Assange. And now here's another, let's go to another update from Taylor Hudak. And shout out to her and Action for Assange for being on the ground in London. I mean, I know NBC's been doing a great job covering this story. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know if they've covered it at all. I mean, they might have mentioned it. I can't speak to that, but I'm sure their coverage is very cherry-picked and selected. All right, so here's her next video.
Back here reporting to you outside Woolwich Crown Court in London. Today is day 2 of Julian Assange's full extradition hearing. We are learning that since yesterday, Julian has been handcuffed numerous times, placed in 5 different holding cells.
So she's varying the stuff that that The Guardian did mention as well. So even The Guardian's mentioning that this happened too.
And he has also been subjected to strip searches. At the end of each day, his case files are being confiscated, and his attorney, Edward Fitzgerald, says that this is a violation of his right to a fair trial. We also heard yesterday mentioning of the Spanish security firm case. We know that the Spanish firm UC Global was spying on Julian Assange while he was living in the Ecuadorian embassy here in London, which that in particular is a violation to his right to a fair trial, specifically the fact that his attorney-client privilege was being violated. So as we learn more about what's taking place in court, I will keep you all updated. Hi, everyone. Taylor Hudak.
So here's a summary so far. Here's a nuts and bolts summary so far. He's been strip searched multiple times. And what I'm gonna go out on a limb and say is it was a very unnecessary action. He's been handcuffed. I mean, they're doing this. They're overdoing this on purpose, right? They're overdoing this on purpose to him, to torment him. They're taking his papers, which goes against a fair and open trial. They're having a back and forth with The Guardian, where The Guardian published this password. They published all this information. WikiLeaks then did their dump later. And also the bigger smoking gun here, there's no evidence, none whatsoever, that anyone was put in direct harm because of this publication. Also, they're trying to get Julian Assange saying he worked with Chelsea Manning. There is no evidence of that. There is no evidence that Julian Assange helped Chelsea Manning hack anything. All he was doing was his job as a publisher. So what are they doing? They're trying to torture Chelsea Manning into a confession. That's what they're doing. So that's the summary of what's been going on so far. And they're also revealing that this guy was being spied on. This guy, Julian Assange, was being spied on when he was in the Ecuadorian embassy. So, and then there's all these other factors where there was like allegedly Trump promised Julian Assange a pardon. And then they're like, well, there was a conversation where they said Julian Assange that they would look into a pardon for him if he reveals or if he claims that Russia had nothing to do with the DNC email link, which Julian Assange has said from day one, it was not a state actor. He does not give away a source. That's something Julian Assange is very dedicated to. He doesn't divulge his sources, but he said it's not a state actor, i.e. it's not a country, i.e. it's not Russia. Julian Assange has been saying that since day one. So there's all these other pieces to the puzzle here where, I mean, when you just take a basic look at it, it's like, yeah, this is just an assault on press freedom. This is just completely bogus. You got to just free this guy immediately. And we're living through this Orwellian brutality. That's really all this really is trying to send a message to other potential whistleblowers and the people who publish them saying, don't. That's what this really is. That's what they're doing with Edward Snowden. That's what they're doing with Chelsea Manning. That's what they're doing with Julian Assange. That's the real message here. You want to speak out. You want to tell some of our secrets. You want to expose the deep state. Think twice. Think twice. Because you might be held in solitary confinement for years without access to sunlight or basic life necessities. or you might be tortured for years and then have your sentence commuted and think that you're free, and then you're going to be thrown in jail again because we want to force a false confession out of you, which is what they're doing to Chelsea Manning. So shout out to Action for Assange for being the boots on the ground here, because if it wasn't for independent media and activists showing up to this thing, we would be kept completely in the dark. And you know, Caitlin Johnstone, brilliant journalist Caitlin Johnstone out of Australia, I recommend reading her work if you never have. She tweeted something recently that I think sums it up so well. She's like, do you ever notice that there's no like pro throwing Assange in jail groups? Like there's no like, oh, extradite him, give him to the US. Like there's no groups in favor of that. Like all the activist groups are saying, free this guy. This is wrong. What's happening? These charges are ridiculous. This is an assault on press freedom. You know, the only people rooting for him to get extradited are people that are actors within the deep state, people that are actors for and on behalf of the intelligence communities, and people complicit in and participants in the war crimes of the United States. Those are the only people that want to see Julian Assange come to the US. So, you know, like we've said before on this show, it is crazy seeing this in real time and watching this in real time and seeing it for what it really is, which they are trying to kill this guy. Like they're trying to kill Julian Assange. That's what they're trying to do. And, you know, this is all because he published some stuff that people didn't want to see. And because he, you know, pissed all the wrong people off. You know, back in the day when he was exposing Bush's war crimes, Democrats loved him. He was considered a hero by the establishment, centrist, you know, whatever you want to call it, by the Democratic establishment. Then all of a sudden, he published some stuff that made the Democrats look bad. So then they turned on him. And then all of a sudden, he became public enemy number one. And him exposing the war crimes of this country became more problematic in their eyes. And that brings us to present day. So hopefully, I mean, when you look at everything available and you look at what, at least the reports on what has transpired so far, it's like any court beyond a reasonable doubt would be like, yeah, you have to pardon this guy immediately. Like there's no there. There's nothing here. But we all know that this isn't actually about justice, is it? So we'll see what happens here. And shout out to Action for Assange for being our boots on the ground here. And shout out to Taylor Hudak for doing that.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your news